Hello, world. My guest today is three-time Olympic gold medal winning swimmer and the great swimming analyst, Rowdy Gaines. Rowdy's a lifelong friend, as we used to play together as little kids. He used to be very mean to me, beat me up all the time. That's the lie that he told my daughter one time. She was saying, "Dad, why are we mean to Rowdy?" And I said, I wasn't. Rowdy was an All-American swimmer at Winter Haven High School, and he went on to stardom at Auburn. He set 10 world records between 78 and 84. Rowdy's often referred to as swimming's greatest ambassador, which I would agree with. He's married, has 4 daughters and 3 granddaughters. Is that correct?
Well, 5 granddaughters now, but
5
yeah.
granddaughters?
I know, right? Dude?
Holy cow, that's a lot of women under one roof.
Oh, man, tell me about it.
My
life is, I play with Barbies and I like it now. That's how bad it is.
Well, that's good. Well, hey, I've got a very handsome 2-year-old grandson that is, he loves the pool. He loves swimming. He loves the slide going into the pool. So maybe if one of those 5 is available, we'll get them together for a play date.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be great.
So Rowdy was inducted into the Olympic Hall of Fame, 2005, International Swimming Hall of Fame in 95. I see you are a board member for Special Olympics, a board member for the ZAK Foundation or ZAC Foundation, board member for Asphalt Green, New York City, ambassador for Swim Across America, ambassador for the U.S. Swimming Foundation. I mean, this is incredible. How do you really find the time to do all this? It's not like everything's in your hometown. These sounds like things that are going on all across the country.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I thought it's so great to be on with you. You know, we go back a long way, brother.
Yep.
Almost 60 years, and it's fun being with you and talking to you. I know I do travel quite a bit. It's kind of been the story of my life since swimming kind of took over my life a long time ago. And, it has its peaks and valleys, obviously, but certainly the peaks are being able to do some kinds of things that you just mentioned and being involved with a lot of philanthropic work. I work my 9-to-5 job. I actually work for a foundation called Step in the Swim, or under the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance, and our job is to try to be able to provide grants to lesson providers around the country for kids to be able to learn how to swim. So I'm really proud of that, and an offshoot of that is being involved with other charitable endeavors.
Well, it's got to be an incredible feeling to be able to give back on the level that you do, and you've been blessed so much in your life, not just with your swimming abilities, but with your friends and especially your family. And I couldn't be happy for you. Your talent really kind of took off as a junior in high school. That seemed to be when I remember, hey, Rowdy swimming, and we got to go watch Rowdy. What seemed to click for you in that year? Were you playing any other sports before then?
Yeah, I didn't really start swimming until my junior year, at Winter Haven High when we were there with Coach Woolwine.
Yeah.
And, Coach Woolwine was also the football coach, or a football coach.
Yep.
And he had slid over to do swimming, I think, a year or two earlier. And I had tried out for a bunch of sports, Todd. I don't know if you remember, but I had tried out for football and baseball, basketball, golf, tennis. I went out with tennis one day with Drew Ireland, who are good friends with.
Yep.
And I didn't make any of them. So swimming was just sort of next in line. It wasn't anything enlightening. It wasn't like I wanted to be in the Olympics or be a swimmer in college. Even I love sports. I think you and I grew up loving sports, and that's what we kind of did. We didn't really care if we were good or not. But by the time you got to high school, it was a little different than Little League. But I just fell in love with swimming. Coach Woolwine didn't cut me, and just kind of one thing led to another. I started really excelling after, it took about 6 months. I didn't even know how to do a flip turn for about 2 months, and it just started clicking. And I think you and I know, and I think especially the members of your audience definitely know that water is part of the fabric of who we are in Winter Haven, Florida, and the surrounding area. It's part of our DNA. So growing up swimming all my life, I learned how to swim before I learned how to walk. I grew up on Lake Eloise. My parents water skied for Cypress Gardens, for crying out loud. So it's something that was part of us, Todd. And for me, it just ended up being competitive after a while.
What did your dad do at Cypress Gardens? Was he a jumper, a kite flyer, a barefooter, or just they all did everything?
He did back then.
Yeah.
This is mid to late 50s. He did everything.
Yep.
They lived on Lake Eloise, and my mom moved from Mississippi there in the mid 50s, and she did everything. And then he ended up being a photographer for Cypress Gardens,
right?
Before he became a motion picture director, and that's when we actually moved from Winter Haven after a while. It ended up back in Winter Haven, but we moved for a couple of years to New York, where my dad had a little bit of a career in motion picture business in New York. But anyway, they both skied for him.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, people don't understand what Cypress Gardens meant to our community back in the day, and Legoland. Now that they've been there, they have a ski show, but they're not known for their ski show like Cypress Gardens was. And so many of the people that still live in Winter Haven were part of the ski show. I never skied out there, but I certainly went and had my fun out there. But I remember when you were in high school. I'm a little off script here, but as you improved and got better and got more recognition, it was like, hey, Rowdy's swimming. It was kind of like when Otis Birdsong was playing basketball. We got to go watch Otis play basketball. And and it was phenomenal, and it was just always fun to do that. You had an incredible college career. You've set world's records. You were the fastest person on the water. What kind of dedication did that really require? And I mean, I've heard you talk about it. Like, how many times do you think you've swum around the earth with all the practice time and everything you've done?
It was funny because we were sitting behind the blocks right before our last race at the Olympics in LA, and it was a relay. Two of my relay golds were on relays, and we were trying to figure out how many miles we had done to get to this point where, my race lasted about 49 seconds, and we had started figuring out roughly, give or take a mile or two, it was about 23,000 miles in 8 years leading up to that point, which is the circumference of the globe roughly around the equator. So only one.
Oh, only once? Okay.
Only one. But figuratively, I swam the world. And then I think since then, I've probably circled again because I still swim for exercise.
Right.
So it's fun.
So in 80, you were at the height of your career. You were you held world records. Everybody's excited, especially in our hometown. Rowdy's going to the Olympics, and the decision comes down, they're boycotting the Olympics.
Right.
Mentally, how do you go from getting ready to showcase your talent to the whole world to being shut down, the mental and emotional toll it took on you, how you dealt with it, how you came back?
Well, it was devastating in the terms of swimming. I mean, from a life standpoint, there are a lot more important things than being able to go to an Olympic Games. But certainly as a swimmer, that's, Todd, our pinnacle of success. We don't have a World Series or Super Bowl. It's the Olympics.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's every 4 years. It's not every year, right?
Yep.
So, it was really tough not to be able to do that and know that you're going to have to wait another 4 years, especially when I swam, buddy, because, there was no money in swimming back when I swam.
Right.
In fact, you weren't allowed to accept money. Between 1982 and 1984, in fact, I worked as a night clerk in a hotel. I had the 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift every night. Just to try to make money and survive. So it was a little bit of a different time. But for me, I was very blessed because I had 1984. There were 363 athletes on that 1980 team that did not make it in 1984 and also didn't make it in 76. So those are the real quote unquote heroes of the Olympic movement because they never had a chance to compete. I did. And I was blessed to be able to have that opportunity.
And I agree with you. There were so many that were robbed of that opportunity. And I remember I was at my mom and dad's house watching you swim in the Olympics. And my dad was standing up and yelling, and my dad was not a very emotional person, and I think I've seen him emotional twice in my lifetime, and that was one of them. He was just so proud for you and proud for your family, and just so excited for you. Has anyone ever really done a deep dive and say, hey, was that the right political move, or is that something that is in the past no one thinks about, no one ever says, hey, should we have done it better, or what? Because I know from reading some things, Carter was going to strip y'all of some of your privileges if anyone tried to do swimming or something. I don't remember exactly what that was, but it seemed like it was a pretty harsh penalty if you went against what they were trying to do.
Well, first of all, you wouldn't have been allowed to anyway, because you would have had to have a visa, and they would have turned you down. There's no way you could have done it even if you wanted to. So, it was. Here's the deal. I think the reason, in hindsight's a beautiful thing when I try to explain the boycott, but I think the reason for the boycott was twofold. One, it was to influence the Russians to get out of Afghanistan, a country that they invaded, which was the reason in the first place for the boycott.
Right.
Ironically, because Russia invaded Afghanistan. And so we wanted to make sure that, we wanted to try to influence that. We felt like a threat of a boycott would do that. And the second reason would have been to move the Olympic Games out of Moscow, which was obviously the Soviet Union at that time. Well, neither one of those were going to happen.
Right.
Certainly the IOC said, screw you, we're not moving the Olympics out of Moscow. And do you think the Russians really were going to leave Afghanistan just because we didn't go to their, Olympics?
No.
In fact, they loved it because they won more medals.
Right.
And their media machine, their propaganda, promoted that. They didn't say anything about America not being there. They just said, hey, we won more medals. So it was just a ridiculous decision. But again, I'm doing it in hindsight, which is something always easier to do. But I just thought it was really a sad and poor decision. Because the best thing would have been to go over there and kick their ass. That's what would have embarrassed them more than anything. And I think we would have done that in 1980.
Sometimes you just scratch your head at the decisions politicians make. And I know I had 8 years of being a politician. And it's like, do you never think some of these decisions all the way through, or just, the first 5%, and there's 95% of the repercussions that people have to deal with. So. Right. Yeah, it's tough, but it all turned out good for me. Yeah. And so you were the best in the world on the freestyle. Did you ever swim any of the others, either competitively? I mean, I know you're known as the sprinter, but did you ever do fly, breast, or back, or were you all primary? Were you always the freestyle guy?
All three. Yeah, all three, Todd. I was terrible in the other strokes. My grandmother could have beat me back then. That's how bad I was.
I knew your
really
grandmother.
Good in freestyle.
Yep.
Yeah, you knew.
Yep.
You knew, Grandma.
Yep.
You spent a lot of time out there in Winter Haven, out on Gaines Cove and Lake Eloise and Lake Lulu and Lake Jesse. You went out there with us, and we had an incredible childhood, you and I. And I have nothing but fond memories of living in Winter Haven and. I have a lot of great pictures. I think I've shared
you have.
some of them, digressing, but I think I've shared some of them that my mom saved, and me and you and Clifford and so many of our, good pals, Charlie, and we had some good times. I love Clifford's old hotel we used to go to, and it was,
the Shamrock Motor Lodge.
Yep, Shamrock Motor Lodge.
That was that was kind of cool, staying in the back of the hotel with no supervision.
Wasn't hotel, motel.
Motel.
What it was.
Do you keep in touch with any of your swimming buddies from Auburn, or any of your Olympic buddies? I mean, I'm sure you do with some.
Oh yeah. I'm on a text chain, like I'm sure you are, with some past buddies. It's 15 or 20 of us, and we all we do is complain about the present day life and politics and everything, and then live our glory years. But I'm definitely I keep in contact with a lot of two different chains, Olympic and Auburn. And
Good.
And I stay in touch with some of the high school buddies.
Yep.
We were just talking about Ralph and Drew, and
Yep.
and I still stay in touch. I don't do Facebook much. That's my problem. I should do Facebook, but I really don't. I do. I kind of read my news through Twitter. I don't even do that much anymore. But I do stay in touch with some of the high school gang from the old days through Facebook, or my sister.
Tracy's still there
in Winter Haven. So, obviously I come down and visit her, and she's awesome, and she keeps me in touch with all the gossip and everything.
Yeah. There's a little gossip going around, but.
Todd's podcast is sponsored in part by SVN Saunders Ralston Dantzler Real Estate. Since 1996, the firm has offered unrivaled brokerage services throughout Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. With over 90 expert advisors throughout the region, our team has the knowledge and resources to help clients realize their most ambitious real estate investment goals. When you choose SVN Saunders Ralston Dantzler Real Estate, you have access to a diverse suite of commercial and land services, including forestry consulting, land management, auctions, property management, commercial leasing, and negotiating conservation easements. If you're seeking to invest in land or explore commercial real estate opportunities in the Southeast, contact us today at svnsaunders.com or call 877-518-5263 to connect with an advisor today. Once again, that's SVNSAUNDERS.com or by phone at 877-518-5263.
How many Olympics have you called? 8, 9 since you've?
8.
8?
8.
What's your favorite place that you've gone and participated either as an announcer or as an athlete? Which Olympics were they?
Well, they're all a little different as far as the experience I had, but my the best one was Beijing, because in 2008, because of the Michael Phelps situation where he won 8 gold medals. I mean, that was that most perfect Olympics, the greatest Olympian, arguably the greatest athlete in history, and going 8 for 8, that was the coolest. I would say my favorite was probably Sydney in 2000, Todd, because Australia has such a love for swimming. It's really their national pastime. Their swimmers are actually more beloved than any of their athletes. So I just love that Olympics because of the appreciation they have for our sport.
So what was it like being in the Olympic Village when you were an athlete, and then, as an announcer? I'm sure you still spend some time either doing interviewing or just hanging out with some of the athletes and, just normally. And then when COVID hit, things were totally different. What's the atmosphere like in the Village?
It's very buttoned up, because everybody's competing, and you've trained 4 years, so you're very respectful of what's going on. My village was at USC because my Olympics was in Los Angeles.
Right.
And we stayed on the USC campus. We just stayed in the dorms on USC campus, which was awesome. The pool we swam in was at the USC campus. In fact, the building we stayed in overlooked the pool, so we could actually watch the swimming from our floor. We were on the 8th floor, and that was really cool. And then, there's a camaraderie. They're your brothers, that you're living with, and our sisters are there. Obviously, they're not on the same floor, and so it's a great time. And the Village is sort of a city in and of itself. It's got barbershops and restaurants and everything you can imagine of living in a little town. And the coolest thing was everything was free.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And you could go eat 24 hours a day, and it's just pretty cool. And I don't think it's changed, to tell you the truth. Everything's pretty much the same, and it gets when it's finished, it gets a little crazy. There's no doubt about it. Everybody kind of lets their hair down, and things go a little crazy.
I would think until your event is done, you're on the straight and narrow. Then when it's done, you're around all these other incredible athletes that have spent years and years to get to that moment. And then, like you said, they let their hair down.
Yeah, it's a free for all. But also, you have to understand the Olympics is 16 days long.
Right.
The swimming is the first 8 days, so we're done. But there's another week to the Olympics, so we have to be certainly cognizant of that, and there is that respect for other sports. But gosh, I got to. Joan Jett played a concert in the Olympic Village. We got to go to that concert. We got to see Lionel Richie. I mean, these are stars back then.
Yeah.
It was cool to be able to, be like one of like 50 people in the audience in the Olympic Village seeing, all these amazing acts and stuff.
So I think I saw you on a morning show after the 84 games, and I think you were on there with Steve Lundquist, and tell me if I'm correct about this. And I don't know which morning show it was, and I could be wrong, but I think the question was asked of you two is, what's next for you two guys? And one of you said I hope they put us out for stud. Was that correct?
That was, I said, the exact quote was, I think it was, I said they're going to put us out to pasture.
Okay.
And then Steve chimed in and said, no, they're going to put us out to stud. And then, he got a big laugh. It wasn't me that said stud. I don't think. It might have been the other way around, but I think I said pasture. But
I think you're probably right on that. Because I was talking to Ralph, and I said, Ralph, do you remember this quote? He said, that sounds like what Lundquist would have said. So we'll go with that.
Ralph's right.
Yeah.
Ralph's right. And Steve was a stud. He was, he was literally like a rock god back then.
Yep.
And
I remember.
Built like a brick house and looked like Adonis, and all the women loved him. And so I think he ended up saying that quote. I'm sure he was taken out the stud for sure, but not me. I was put out the pasture.
I understand. Are you still swimming in the Master Series? Are you still active in that? I know you've got records in that as well, or had records in that.
Yeah, I still swim Masters. I have a Masters meet in Orlando, Todd, every year in October, which is awesome. I love putting that on every year. I don't swim much in it anymore. We have about 30 Special Olympians, and
right.
I swim relays with them now and everything. So I stick with them. But I was swimming Masters for a while in my 30s and in my 50s, but not much anymore. No, I'm so busy, dude. I travel 15, 20 days a month, and I don't want to come home and tell my family, my wife, say, I'm going to go to a Masters meet for 3 days and swim. I don't want to do that anymore. So things are kind of winding down. I'm doing the commentating at the Olympics in Paris. I signed to do Los Angeles, which I don't think I've announced yet. So I guess you're the first to hear about it. But so I'm going to do the next 2 Olympic Games, and then I think my wife and I are looking forward to spending a lot more time with her.
Good. Our
children, certainly, but more importantly, spend more time with our grandchildren.
They are absolutely the greatest thing in the world is grandchildren. So a couple of personal questions. How'd you get your name Rowdy?
It came from an old television series called Rawhide, and Clint Eastwood played a character called Rowdy Yates. You're old like me, so you remember that TV
I remember the story.
Yeah, Rowdy. His name was Rowdy Yates on the show, and my dad thought it was a cute nickname, and didn't think it would stick. And my real name, Todd, is Ambrose Gaines the Fourth.
Yeah,
I don't have a middle name. Yeah, I'm the fourth. Yeah. So they just wanted me to have a nickname as a little baby, but 64 years later, here it is, still there.
And Ralph had said something about you had a bear in your garage when you were in Orlando. Did that tear the place up, or did it just come in and eat and go? Or
yeah, it's crazy. I'll text you the video of it when we're done. You'll see it. And that's one of only I have a dozen of them when bears got in the garage. Yeah, it's just. And we lived in a neighborhood. We didn't even live in the country, God. We lived in, Aliqua Lakes in Orlando, Florida. But their bears were pretty rampant there. Yeah, they used to get in the garage all the time. And dude, they would open the refrigerator. We had a refrigerator in the garage. They would open the refrigerator. They would eat all the food in the refrigerator, and then they'd close it back up for us. I mean, I'm not kidding. They
So
did
they're
that
polite
like
bears.
twice. It's so weird. It's so weird. But it was so disgusting too. I never really was scared, but it was a little, I mean, it's a little shocking to see a bear in your garage for sure.
Especially if you wander out there unsuspecting and expect to get something out of the fridge and you see Yogi out there.
Well, yeah. And we had, there was a woman in our neighborhood, I think she lived in our neighborhood, that got mauled. So yeah, it was, we had a dog and, it was a little scary. So
I want to ask you one story about Bobby Vaughn, a friend from high school. And Bobby's dad was business partners with my dad. And you told this story when you were the keynote speaker at the Central Florida Development Council for us a few years ago about Bobby driving around. And you and some other buddies were in the car. And I thought that was hilarious because Bobby was blind, but he was your driver.
Well, Todd, this is, oh my God. 72. This is almost 50 years ago, buddy.
Yeah.
So I would never, ever promote your high school kids in Winter Haven doing that with your sight impaired friend. For sure. But yeah, Bobby was legally blind, completely blind in one eye and about 80% in the other. So he could make out shapes, but yeah, he was blind. And yeah, we used to let him drive. We'd go to the Winter Haven Mall and let him just take off in the parking lot, and he just loved it, driving around that parking lot. I'll never forget it. And I had magical memories as a high schooler, and certainly the most magical memory for me was Bobby Vaughn and what he meant to me in my life. And really one of the main reasons why I started swimming was because of Bobby. And he wanted to swim on the swim team. So I just kind of helped him. And it's a longer story than that, obviously, but I miss him every day. He was taken from us, got struck by lightning while water skiing a couple years later, as you remember. But you remember Jeb Fields and Rusty Snively and John Putney. I mean, these are still people that I hold so dear to my heart today, just like I hold you and Clifford and Charlie and everybody else dear to my heart. But it was crazy, man. And it shows you the kind of life he lived when he was water skiing.
Yeah. He always just had such a great attitude, from what I remember. And
always.
Nothing seemed to get him down. He just always was so resilient. So
he was, and I know a lot of people are listening are thinking, we don't really, you don't have the context of who Bobby was, but I think every one of us has a friend like that,
right?
Whether they were, handicapped or not, everybody has a friend like Bobby that they remember back in high school, and he was mine.
Yeah. I just mentioned you had spoken to the Central Florida Development Council as our keynote speaker a few years ago. I know you're available for speaking engagements, but I can just tell you, Rowdy is engaging, he's entertaining, he's motivating when he speaks, and about his message about overcoming difficulties in his life. He's very, very inspirational. And Rowdy, while being so accomplished, he's also very, very humble. And I mean that honestly and truly. And, not just overcoming the disappointment of the 80 Olympics and then rebounding in 84 and, being the best in the world, but you also had a very serious illness that you had to deal with, and how the struggle was to come back from that and how scary it was. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, buddy. First of all, thank you. I appreciate it. I think I'm very lucky in that my wife keeps me grounded and makes sure I know what's important in my life. And believe me, I waver a lot. I think I'm way cooler than I really am sometimes. And but no. Guillain-Barré syndrome is what I had. It's a neurological disorder. I got it in 1991, so about 30 years ago. And basically what it does in layman's terms is it shreds the sheath around your nerve. You have a protective coating around your nerve, and everything just sort of short circuit, so to speak. And so I literally went around one day walking around. In fact, I just got through swimming in a Masters meet and broke a couple of Masters world records, et cetera, et cetera. And within 24 hours, I was completely paralyzed. And spent about 6 months in the hospital, in and out, and kind of had to learn how to do everything all over again. But I made a recovery, and it's just one of those things that, again, you learn to appreciate and put your health in perspective.
Yep.
Not that I'm perfect even today about that, but certainly back then, you think, oh my gosh, we are, always vulnerable. We should live life to the fullest.
Right. But another challenge that you faced it with your family, you beat it, you come out on the other side. And again, it's a testament to your family's, ability to withstand these type of difficulties. And I know your family was there with you.
No doubt. In fact, my wife was the one that literally, she almost like picked me up and said, we're going to the hospital, because I said, no, I just had the flu. And she said, no, we're going to the hospital. And she like threw me in the car and drove me down. And thank goodness she did, because they were able to, kind of get right on it and do whatever they needed to do. So, and then, my mom and dad flew in and a lot of friends and stuff. So, yeah, no doubt I had great family.
Yeah. I don't watch much swimming other than the Olympics, and I can just tell you make it exciting, even though I don't understand fully what I'm doing. But your zeal, your enthusiasm, and your love of the sport comes across through your voice. And I've even texted you, when you've been on air, and I know you respond later, but just saying, hey, thanks for making this so exciting for me to watch.
Thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. This is Juliet Ashley Vai, Miss Florida 2023, and I'm excited to promote this awesome platform. With each episode, Todd continues to interview some of the most intriguing individuals, and you're not going to want to miss it. That being said, don't forget to subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thanks.
Who are the young Olympians, the young athletes that you're watching in what Olympic sports? I mean, I always thought Simone Biles was just incredible. I loved watching her perform.
Who's that?
Simone Biles, the gymnastics.
Oh, yeah. Simone Biles.
I just love watching her fly through there. Just amazed me how great she was. What other Olympic sports do you follow other than swimming, and who are the new young up-and-coming Olympians that you're looking at?
Well, like I said, the Olympic swimming is the first 8 days. So the last 8 days, I get to, go around and go to other events. My wife usually comes to an Olympic Games. She didn't in Tokyo, but we go to, I love beach volleyball. I love others. I love all the sports. I've never been to a Winter Olympics.
Really?
But never been to a Winter Games. Been to 9 regular Summer Olympics, but never a winter. But I watch Winter Olympics every 4 years. Yeah. I'm glued to the set. I just love the Olympic Games and what they represent, even to this day. I know they're not perfect, but I love them, and so I love all the sports. Table tennis, everything you name it. I'm a fan. And there are some really good swimmers coming up. I'm in Indianapolis covering the World Championship trials on NBC, and in fact they're going to be on this weekend, and I'm going to the World Championships next month in Japan, and there are a lot of young kids that you don't know any of them.
Right.
The average fan's not going to know who Thomas Heilman is, or Claire Curzan, or some of these great swimmers that are coming up. We know the Katie Ledeckis and the Caleb Dressels and, of course, the Michael Phelpses, but a lot of these kids are going to be really, really good, and they'll be the big stars in Paris in a year.
Yeah. You've been a world-class athlete, world record holder, and so much of it is mental and so much of it is physical. I know you've been gifted with physical abilities, and God's gifted you with those abilities. How much is physical and how much is mental? Is it 50-50? Is it, hey, you got to have the body and the strength, but you got to have the muscle between your ears? is more important? What do you think it is?
It's so funny you asked that, dude. My wife Judy and I were just talking about that yesterday. She asked me the same question. Certainly during training, it's more. I say it's more physical, just because when you're swimming 10 miles a day, 6 days a week, it has to be somewhat physical. You have to get through it mentally, but it takes a physical toll, obviously. But when you get behind the blocks and, all of that has to come together, it's much more of a mental game. But I think if you do the work physically, the mental stuff takes care of itself. That's the key. To tell you the truth, I hated swimming. I hated training. I don't like to be in pain. I don't like pain. I'm the biggest wimp in the world, Todd. I am so wimpy when it comes to pain. Just nothing but a big baby. But I crave the feeling of after the practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't know, you call it the endorphins or whatever, but I love the feeling of after a practice was done. So that's what motivated me every day from a physical standpoint. I just knew the feeling I was going to have after I was done. Didn't like it during, but loved it afterwards. And I think if you take care of the training part physically, everything kind of lines up mentally because it gives you confidence. I mean, if you do the work, you know that mentally you're going to be sharp because of the physical work that was done. I know that's kind of corny, but that's the way I believe. That's what I believed anyway. Not all the time.
Right.
I failed many times, buddy. Dude, I failed a lot more than I succeeded in swimming, but certainly the successes were made because of what I was able to do physically and mentally.
But that kind of reminds me of what Tiger Woods talked about. You just have to grind it out when it's a crappy day, you don't feel like doing it, and you got 2 more miles to do or whatever. You just got to grind it out mentally and physically, and then you get to the other side and you've accomplished whatever your goal was for that day.
Yeah, true.
We're just about done. You've been generous with your time. I got a couple other questions. You coach and you teach and you mentor kids, high school kids, college kids, Olympic athletes. What's the best advice you can give to these athletes to motivate them and help them realize their dreams and their goals?
Well, I'm the last one that should be giving advice because, I've failed in so many different ways. But I can tell you from my successes through the peaks, I think that the ones that lived through the valleys are the ones that really were defined by the valleys. Does that make sense? I was defined by my losses a lot more than my wins. I remember my losses a lot more than my wins. But I also learned from them. And I think a lot of what I try to tell kids today is you're going to have this roller coaster ride through life. And if you can, it's just exactly what you just said, Todd. I mean, you just said it. If you can just grind out those really tough times, you're going to be better of it. And you need to have the foresight to see that. The other thing I will tell you that people ask me all the time, what's the number one reason why you want a gold medal? And I tell them every time, it's because I loved swimming. I told you I didn't like pain. I hated swimming training and everything. But overall, dude, I loved swimming so much. I just loved it. And I didn't love it every minute. There were times I didn't love it, but I think the key word is consistently. If you consistently have a passion for what you do, you're going to be really good at it. I'm not saying you're going to win a gold medal or whatever, but I think if you have that consistent love and passion for whatever it is, playing the piano, being a great doctor or whatever, I think you're going to be successful. And I know that's simplistic, but that was definitely true for me with swimming.
But, sometimes the simplest answers are the best and they make the most sense. And that's the right answer too. So,
yeah.
So the last thing I want to ask you is your opinion on NIL, and name, image, likenesses, what's going on in college and how these college athletes are doing that. You were the best in the world, not in Polk County, not just SEC, not just in America, but you were the best in the world. Your buddies that you swam with were the best in the world. Do you and your old former teammates sit around the old folks' home and just say, man, what if we came around 35 years later or 45 years later? What would life be like?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We always lament and say what if. But in the end, I'm really happy for these kids. But I will tell you, Todd, the NIL is, boy, it has become a slippery slope.
I agree. I don't see how it advances amateur athletics at all.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. Obviously, there's no such thing as amateur athletics anymore. And I think it's going to be the haves and have-nots eventually, and it's basically going to be who's going to pay me the most money to come to your college.
Right.
And that is sad to me in many, many ways. I get it for the kids. It's great for the kids. I'm happy that financially they are rewarded. But I think it's in the end, I think it's going to be more detrimental, certainly for certain universities, and I think certainly for sport in some ways, because I think a lot of these Olympic sports, so-called minor sports, are going to go by the wayside because these colleges are only going to be able to support football or basketball or maybe baseball. And I think a lot of other sports are going to suffer for sure.
Yeah, it seems like the football program seems to support so many of the other sports programs, whether it's girls or boys or the bigger events that don't bring in the money.
And I think when you start using your budget to pay the football players, especially, then that budget goes away for the other sports. And I get it. I totally, dude. I am right there in front of that television every single weekend watching college and pro football. So I get it. I'm a fan too, but it makes me sad. That's all.
But you also see these head coaches that are making $15-20 million a year because they've got these national football programs, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
Rowdy, I appreciate it. I appreciate your generosity with your time for being our special guest today. Rowdy, you've been a lifelong friend. I said it earlier, you used to pick on me when we were little kids, and you even blew that story with my daughter.
No. Dude, I even sent you the picture where you literally, that picture of you just jumping right in front of me. You could barely see my face. You should show your fans that. Proves my point.
If I had fans, I'd show them that. You've been you're a world-class champion swimmer and a world-class philanthropist. And more than that, you're just a world-class person. You're so generous with your time and what you do. I encourage anyone, if the Olympics are on or any other swimming event, you listen, because Rowdy will get you excited about it, whether you're a swimming fan or not. And I just want to thank you. Best of luck to Judy and your kids and your grandkids. You're surrounded by women, and I wish you good luck with that. Is rowdygaines.com still a good site if anyone wants to check out, see whether you could be a speaker for them or a motivational speaker?
Sure. And I encourage people to go to stepintoswim.org.
Stepintoswim.org?
Stepintoswim.org. We literally give grants to those children and families that would not be able to take swim lessons, Todd, the opportunity to be able to learn how to swim. Drowning is an epidemic in our country, and the number one cause of death in children ages 1 to 4. And we want to try to stop that in its tracks. And so we're trying to do that with Step in the Swim.
Fantastic. Rowdy, thank you again for your time. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for your friendship. And I look forward to seeing you next time you're home.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Good luck. Hey, everybody. I want to thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. This has been your host, Todd Dantzler. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll tune in next time, where we have a chat with Margie Grant, the CEO of the Florida Association of Realtors. We talk about issues that are facing the real estate industry, issues that are facing our association, some of the political things and insurance, and some of the things I think that you might find interesting that are involved in the real estate transaction. So next time, it'll be with Margie Grant, the CEO of the Florida Realtor Association. Please let me know what you think. As always, don't forget to rate, review, follow, and subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you have any questions for me or any suggestions for future guests, please call or text our number at 863-288-0944 or visit todddantzler.com. Again, that's 863-288-0944, or visit my website, todd-dantzler.com. DANTZLER.com. I look forward to hearing your questions and feedback, and please take care.